enjoying the last days of summer out on my balcony in downtown Kansas City. Even though it's been a hot and a dry one, I'm always sad to see it end. But I guess all good things must come to an end. And when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. And when the end of summer gives you a bounty of basil, you make pesto. Or at least we do here at Veg with Lisa. Not just any old pesto, but pesto with a twist. It's a vegan Asian pesto. I'm going to show you how easy it is to whip some up. What makes today's pesto different from traditional pesto is I'm going to use 3 fresh herbs instead of just basil. And 2 of these 3 herbs I grew at my garden at Sprout Community Garden. For my basil, I'm going to use Thai basil, which is a slightly different variety. You can see it's got a nice little purple flower to it. It has just a little bit stronger licorice flavor. If you don't have Thai basil, no worries. Use regular basil. Cilantro and flat leaf parsley. Now you can see it's the end of summer, so my basil's starting to get a little bit woody. That's not a problem. What I normally do in that situation is just kind of pick the leaves off like so. You don't really want those woody stems in your pesto. Now if you've got nice fresh basil with just normal stems and it's not too woody, just go ahead and chop it up as is. Make sure you don't get any of those dried up seed pods. Again, that's just because it's the end of summer. To make pesto, you really do need one piece of equipment. I like to use a food processor. If you don't have a food processor, no worries. You can do it the old-fashioned way in a big mortar and pestle, or you can use your blender. Got a little bit of fresh garlic that I'm going to put in here. Be careful how much fresh garlic you use because it's going to be raw and you don't want to overdo it with the garlic. Your friends aren't vampires. Next in, some chopped fresh ginger. And remember, fresh ginger is from ginger root. It's different from powdered ginger. Don't use powdered ginger in this recipe. Some toasted pine nuts. And remember, when you toast your pine nuts, they burn easily. I'm going to add the basil that I picked off the stalks, or if you've got nice tender stems, just chop it. You can see how easy this is. I'm just dumping everything into the food processor. Next, I'm going to add my cilantro, and I like to store mine in a glass jar with water. It'll keep in the refrigerator for several days. Just going to chop off the bottom part of these stems. It's okay to use the rest of the stems in cilantro. In fact, if you have the roots, go ahead and use the roots too. They use cilantro roots in a lot of Asian and Latin cooking. Next comes my parsley. And I keep it in a glass jar as well. Same as I did with the cilantro, I'm just going to chop off the thick stems. Actually, I'm going to chop this a couple times because this is a little bit thicker. Now I'm going to add my liquids. I've got some tamari, which I like to use instead of regular soy sauce. It's wheat-free soy sauce, therefore it's gluten-free for your gluten-free friends. Give that a pulse. Some fresh lime juice, and again, pulse. And the real key, I think, to this is some toasted sesame oil. Toasted sesame oil is different from regular sesame oil, and you can find it in the Asian aisle of your supermarket or at Asian supermarkets. Sesame oil smells delicious. Process the pesto until everything's well combined, and you can freeze it or keep it in the refrigerator until you're ready to use it. But I'm going to show you a tasty recipe. Soba noodles tossed with my Asian pesto and then topped with either roasted tofu or roasted shrimp if you eat fish. I cooked some soba noodles. Soba are Japanese noodles made from buckwheat and sometimes wheat flour. So if you're gluten-free, You can look for the ones that are 100% buckwheat, because buckwheat's not really a wheat at all. But do be careful because some of them will have wheat flour in them. Toss some of that fresh Asian pesto in with the buckwheat. And a nice little trick here is I've got some on the stove. You can save a little bit of the cooking water from cooking the noodles to toss in with this. Sometimes that helps. So just toss these noodles until they're coated with that pesto, adding any cooking water as needed. I've tossed my cooked soba noodles with my pesto, and now I'm going to plate up my dish. Nice. I've got two options for topping my noodles with. First is some tofu that I marinated in a soy sauce, red wine, ginger garlic mixture, and then roasted in the oven till it was crispy. And the other is some shrimp that I also roasted in the same marinade. So you can use either shrimp or tofu or both. Yummy looking. We've got a great beer and a great wine to taste with this too. Debbie at the Cellarette suggested a Riesling wine to go with my Asian pesto dish. At first it seemed like a curious choice, but the more I spoke with her and thought about it, it makes perfect sense. A little bit of sweetness in the Riesling and hopefully a nice amount of acid to contrast a little bit of spiciness that I've got in my tofu marinade. So let's give it a try. First, let me check out these soba noodles with this pesto. And let's try tofu. I got the tofu nice and crispy, just the way I like it. It smells nice and fresh. Delicious, perfect. Just a little bit of sweetness, contrasting with my pesto, and a nice amount of acid to brighten up the spice. Yeah, well done. Glory, who doubles as photographer and beer connoisseur, chose a wheat beer. I think because she didn't want the beer to get in the way of all the strong flavors going on in our pesto. Glory, I like this a lot. That's really nice. Kind of like the wine, nice and light, but bright enough that it contrasts with those really strong flavors in the pesto and in the marinade. Two awesome options. Cheers.